All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're exploring the awe-inspiring 50 million year epic of the Indian subcontinent. We are going to witness an absolutely incredible story, tracing how a drifting, totally isolated tectonic plate in the middle of the ocean violently crashed into Asia to create the Himalayas, and then eventually transformed into a modern global powerhouse. Now, this isn't just some dry timeline of dates. It's a gripping hero's journey of a land and its people, surviving cataclysms, forging unprecedented empires, enduring the absolute darkest of betrayals, and rising triumphantly from the ashes time and time again. So here is our roadmap for this journey. First, we'll look at the birth of land and human. Then we move from the Indus Valley to the Golden Age. After that, we'll cover foreign invasions and resistance, followed by British rule and deep slavery. Finally, we'll wrap up with the great struggle for freedom and the rise of a new, powerful India. Okay, Section 1. Birth of land and human. From tectonic collisions to the first humans. Imagine this, an isolated island drifting across the ocean 50 million years ago. It collides with the Eurasian plate with just unimaginable force, literally giving birth to the towering Himalayas. That massive crash actually changed the global winds, bringing monsoon rains and transforming what was essentially a barren rock into a lush paradise. Fast forward a bit, and about 1.5 million years ago, the first human ancestors, Homo erectus, arrived from Africa. And they dominated this land for ages. But then, 74,000 years ago, the Toba supervolcano in Indonesia erupts. It was basically a time bomb that blotted out the sun, blanketing India in toxic white ash and triggering a deadly volcanic winter. But the story doesn't end there, because around 65,000 years ago, a new group of survivors arrived on this completely reshaped land, Homo sapiens. So here's the thing. When the climate changed, brute strength just completely failed. Homo erectus had these massive, muscular bodies that required huge amounts of calories. When that volcanic winter wiped out the large game, their heavy stone hand axes became useless, and they tragically perished. But the agile Homo sapiens survived. Why? Well, because of a technological revolution. They invented tiny, razor-sharp stone blades called microliths, which is essentially the missile technology of the Stone Age. They attached these tiny blades to wood and bone to hunt swift, smaller animals from a safe distance. They also found sanctuary in natural rock fortresses, like the Bhimbetka caves, using fire not just to stay warm, but as a security guard against apex predators. So brains, community, and innovation won over pure brawn. Moving right along to Section 2, Indus Valley to Golden Age, the dawn of innovation. It is absolutely fascinating, honestly, to think that 9,000 years ago in Mehrgarh, people weren't just farming wheat and barley, they were performing early dentistry, with fine stone drills, no less. That kind of ingenuity paved the way for the Indus Valley civilization, which was this massive, peaceful empire spanning 1.5 million square kilometers. They were quite literally the world's first urban planners. Their streets were cut at perfect 90-degree grids, and their sanitation systems rivaled modern metropolis, complete with covered drains and manholes. They even built the waterproof Great Bath in Mohenjo-Daro using natural bitumen. Eventually, as the climate shifted and rivers dried up, the civilization gracefully transitioned into the Vedic period. This era brought the discovery of iron, which was used to clear dense forests for agriculture, and it witnessed the epic Dasarayana, or the Battle of the Ten Kings, on the banks of the river Ravi, where King Sudasa's victory unified the north and ultimately gave the country its name, Bharat. And this builds perfectly into what we call a true golden age. It was a time of immense intellectual wealth, where India led the world in science, mathematics, and philosophy. Just look at the Mauryan Empire. Guided by the genius strategist Chanakya, Chandragupta Maurya united a totally fractured land. His grandson, Ashoka the Great, later abandoned warfare completely after the bloody Kalinga War to spread Buddhism and peace globally. Then came the Gupta Empire, which was really the true zenith of the Golden Age. We see figures like Aryabhata giving the world the concept of zero, and engineers forging the Iron Pillar of Delhi, which has miraculously stood completely rust-free for over 1,600 years. And under King Harshavardhan, India became a massive global education hub. King Harsha was actually known for such extreme charity that every 5 years he would donate his entire wealth, right down to his royal garments. 3 months. Just let that sink in for a second. 3 months. That is how long the magnificent Nalanda University Library burned after being attacked by Bakhtiyar Khilji in the late 12th century. Nalanda was the brain of India, housing thousands of students and teachers from around the globe. This single tragic event turned thousands of years of irreplaceable scientific, mathematical, and medical knowledge directly into smoke. So, what does this all mean? As we transition away from this golden era, we really have to ask ourselves, why did a civilization so advanced, so wealthy, suddenly become so vulnerable? The source material highlights a pretty painful historical pattern. Indian kings followed strict codes of honor. They wouldn't strike an unarmed foe, and they typically forgave defeated enemies. But this very kindness, this overtrust in the honorable conduct of warfare, left them devastatingly exposed to foreign invaders whose only objective was total conquest and plunder. Which brings us to Section 3, Foreign Invasions and Fierce Resistance, the Age of Fire and Steel. The harsh truth of this era is that India was rarely beaten by sheer military might. The true enemy was, tragically, often within. Take Emperor Prithviraj Chauhan, for example. After utterly defeating Muhammad Ghori at the First Battle of Tarain, Prithviraj honorably forgave him and let him walk away. Well, that forgiveness was met with pure deceit. Ghori returned, and aided by the betrayal of a rival Indian king, Jai Chand, he defeated Prithviraj in a treacherous night attack. We see this exact pattern repeated later when the great Maratha warrior Sambhaji Maharaj was betrayed by his own brother-in-law, Ganoji Shirke, which led to his brutal execution. Internal disunity is really what cost the subcontinent its freedom. But alongside that immense tragedy came some absolutely unimaginable heroism. When Alauddin Khilji deceitfully laid siege to the fortress of Chittorgarh, it led to one of history's most heart-wrenching moments. To protect their honor from the invading army, Rani Padmini led 16,000 women into a massive fire in the ultimate act of sacrifice known as Jahar. You can practically feel the heat of that fire just talking about it. But the spirit of resistance never died out. Decades later, Maharana Pratap refused to bow down to the mighty Mughal Empire. Abandoning his royal comforts, he lived in the Aravalli forests, famously eating rotis made of grass, fighting a relentless guerrilla war alongside local tribal allies, all just to keep the flame of freedom alive. Down in the south, the Vijayanagara Empire was a massive bulwark of culture. Its capital, Hampi, was so wealthy, they literally sold diamonds and pearls in open sacks on the streets. No way, right? But fast forward to the era of British colonization, and we see a complete inversion of that prosperity. The British enforced such brutal economic extraction that they reportedly cut off the thumbs of India's master weavers. Why? To destroy the local textile industry and force Indians to buy British cloth. Now we head into Section 4, British Rule and Deep Slavery, the Shadows of Empire. So the crucial point here is that British rule wasn't just a simple military conquest. It was a highly calculated economic and psychological dismantling of a once thriving civilization. It really kicked off with the 1757 Battle of Plassey, won not by British military genius, mind you, but by buying off the Nawab's commander, Mir Jafar. What followed was a systematic drain of wealth straight to London. Farmers were forced to grow indigo instead of food, which completely ruined the fertile soil. This greed led to deliberately induced famines that starved millions to death. And all the while, the British employed this cunning divide-and-rule policy, turning kings against each other and brothers against brothers, just to ensure the populace could never unite against them. This sparks Section 5, the Great Struggle for Freedom, the Awakening of a Nation. Out of all that deep oppression, the resistance ignited in so many different forms. You had the sweeping, nonviolent mass movements led by Mahatma Gandhi, who galvanized the whole nation with simple yet profound acts, like the Dandi March for Salt. But you also had the blazing fire of the revolutionaries. Young heroes like Bhagat Singh kissed the hangman's noose with a smile, while Subhash Chandra Bose actually escaped British surveillance to build the Indian National Army abroad. Bose's roaring battle cry, "You give me blood, I will give you freedom," proved the undeniable burning fire of Indian resistance. Eventually, the British realized that the very Indian soldiers they relied on to hold the empire together were no longer loyal to the crown, but to their motherland. But we really have to remember that this hard-fought independence came at a staggering human cost. By August 1947, freedom was finally won, ending centuries of colonial rule. However, a British officer named Cyril Radcliffe, a man who barely even knew the geography of the land, drew a line on a map that violently sliced the nation in two. This single stroke of a pen drowned the joy of freedom in the blood and tears of a tragic partition. Millions of people were displaced overnight, becoming refugees in their own homeland, leaving a permanent scar on the psyche of the subcontinent. And finally, Section 6, Rise of New, Powerful India, a Triumphant Rebirth. 93,000.
That staggering number represents the Pakistani soldiers who surrendered to the Indian Army in 1971. It stands as the largest military surrender in modern history since the Second World War. After being left completely drained and divided by colonial rule, this pivotal moment firmly established India's military resilience and marked its true emergence as the undisputed powerhouse of South Asia.
To put this all into perspective, just consider where they started. Back in 1947, the Iron Man of India, Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, achieved the impossible by uniting 562 fragmented princely states into one single cohesive nation. When the British left, they actually mocked that India couldn't even manufacture a needle. Yet, in the 1960s, India's space agency, ISRO, was literally transporting its first rocket parts on the back of bicycles. But through sheer grit, they conducted the Pokhran nuclear tests in 1974 to secure their sovereignty, and by 2023, they achieved what superpowers couldn't, landing Chandrayaan on the unexplored south pole of the moon. I mean, a nation that was left stripped of its wealth has rocketed its way to becoming the world's fifth largest economy. It's the ultimate comeback story. So, as we wrap up this explainer and you reflect on this epic 50-million-year journey, think about the billions of forgotten heroes, farmers, innovators, and warriors who bled for this soil. From surviving volcanic winters with tiny stone blades to bouncing back from the darkest betrayals and colonial extraction, all the way to conquering the lunar South Pole. The superpower of this civilization isn't just surviving, it's rising from the ashes stronger every single time. So I'll leave you with this. Knowing the immense weight of this immortal legacy, how will we carry it forward, and what unprecedented heights will this unbreakable civilization reach next?